Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I'm Andrew Scaff. He's Mike Werman. Today we're going to recap the NFL's Week 15 action, update our ongoing betting competition, also talk about the World Cup final from just a few days ago, and then get into the NFL's Week 16 preview. We'll start where we've been starting the last several weeks with recapping action from last week in the NFL. Mike, what did you find to be the most interesting story from Week 15? Was it the continued success from a Mr. Irrelevant third-string quarterback leading the 49ers into a playoff spot, now wrapped up? I'm going to guess it's probably not the Chiefs narrowly winning in overtime against a not very good team, but then clinching the division, or something else like the largest comeback or largest collapse, depending on which angle you want to take from that in an NFL game. What was most interesting in Week 15?
Yeah, week 15 was a strange week, I think, in that a lot of the teams that were supposed to be very good played a lot of really close games against teams that were not supposed to be very good. And that includes, I think, the Vikings barely beating the Colts, the Eagles really having a tough time with the Bears, the Cowboys actually losing to the Jaguars, the Chiefs barely beating the Texans, even though we will talk about that game more. The way that game looks from a box score perspective, it seems like the Chiefs really dominated that game. So I think the Brock Purdy story is still interesting. I guess I think maybe the most interesting story was actually the way the Patriots Raiders game ended. That the game being close wasn't a surprise because I think both teams are decent but flawed in a lot of ways. I don't think the Patriots have a very good offense. I think the Raiders have a bad coach. But it kind of ironically it hinged on what might be poor coach. I don't know if you call it poor coaching or not, but a dumb mistake or series of mistakes that the Patriots made at the very end of that game. Not playing for overtime, but trying to score the winning touchdown as if they were behind in that game and had run out of time. And it turned out to be a defensive touchdown by the Raiders to end the game in regulation. What did you think of that game, and what was your most interesting part of the week? I think there are lots of pieces as well. I think the Colts collapse and the continued Jeff Saturday kind of spiral is kind of interesting, but
it's more of just a cliff, really, isn't it? It's just one awful thing after another for Saturday. After that one very brief high after winning his first game, but
yeah, it's a little bit like
or like Baker Mayfield won his first game and then didn't look so good in the second. Late collapse there too, like not playing well.
I have an analogy for the Jeff Saturday situation. If you want to get to it later, or do you want to do it now?
Sure, go for it.
The Simpsons analogy. You remember that episode, early Simpsons episode, where where Bart was going to jump over Springfield Gorge on his skateboard, and Homer ended up doing it instead, and he went down the gorge, and everybody thought he was going to die, but then he was up and he was in the air, and he thought, "Ooh, I'm gonna make it! I'm gonna make it! I'm gonna make it!" And he was very celebratory, but then he crashed horribly and hit all the rocks coming down,
like every rock on the way down. Yeah.
And then when the helicopter and ambulance helicopter or whatever lifted him up on the stretcher, it banged his head on the rocks as he went up, and then he went into the ambulance, and the ambulance crashes into the tree and opens the back up, and Homer falls down the ravine again.
So where is he in this sequence right now?
I think, well, there are only 3 games left, but I think we're at least to the crashing of the ambulance into the tree. Because I think that the victory, because we had the victory of Saturday's first game. That was he was up in the air
I
over.
think I'm gonna make it.
Oh, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. And then I think when he was way ahead, they were way ahead of the Vikings. He was put in the ambulance, so he's gonna be all right. But then it crashes again. So I think maybe that's where we are.
So does that mean he's gonna get like 36 more seasons?
Perhaps. He's going to have many.
Is that where you were going with that?
No, I was going to end it in that episode, but I think that was from season 2. Bart the Daredevil was the name of the episode, but I think that was, in some ways, that's the birth of the kind of modern Homer Simpson, when the show became more about, it was less about, like, the first couple of seasons were more about Bart and his hijinks,
Right.
and then as the show got better, it became more about Homer as the center, and because Homer was funnier than just kind of a bad kid Bart, and Bart was better supporting character. And so I think, I don't know if he'll get 3 more decades plus as the Colts head coach, but I think
it's really is, how far does this analogy go? Is it will it go all the way to
so
additional 30 seasons?
So Jeff Saturday as Colts coach, he started out with a 25-20 win over the Raiders, a very close loss to the Eagles, a fairly close loss to the Steelers, a blowout loss to the Cowboys, bad loss, a big win, and then a 3-point loss to the Vikings. So he still has the Chargers, Giants, and Texans left on the schedule. So I guess maybe you could say he's still at the bottom of the ravine, and maybe he's just being rescued right now, but his head is banging against. There's still room for 3 more weeks for horrible things to happen. So if it's a perfect analogy, I'm not. I guess that would be what it is. But, I know Saturday was wanting to like parlay this potential success into a more long-term head coaching job, but I don't think that's necessarily going to happen.
Was he actually named like an interim coach, or did they just hire him to be the coach? Was it?
I think he was named interim coach.
That's what I thought. But
because that way,
kind of strange to.
I think there still are more rules that you have to follow to hire full-time head coaches, like the interviewing minority candidates and things like that, which the Colts didn't do. So I think when you name an interim coach, I don't know how long an interim coach can last either. So maybe he can stay. Maybe they could have to stay interim coach as long as
multiple years,
because every coach really is an interim coach. In
the
NFL, it just depends on how long nobody has a job for life. Maybe other than Belichick, Andy Reid might be approaching that territory.
You'd think he'd be in that area. I mean, as many wins as he's gotten, in his different stints. It's actually a little surprising that the Eagles let him go in some regard. Except that he's gotten almost to the Super Bowl several times, and that's really what they were looking to. They thought he was capped out, basically, right? Like
he had kind of. So he started. Let's look at his record. He started coaching the Eagles in 1999, and he went 5-11 his first season, and then he went 11-5 the next year, lost in the divisional round. Went 11-5, lost in the NFC Championship game. 12-4, lost in the NFC Championship game. 12-4, lost in the NFC Championship game. 13-3 in 2004, lost in the Super Bowl. And then his teams were not quite as regularly successful.
Yeah,
he had a losing season in 2005. 10-6 divisional title. 2006 lost in the first round. 8-8 2007, 9-6-1, not as good, but they ended up making the NFC Championship game, losing to the Cardinals. That was the year the Steelers beat the Cardinals with Kurt Warner in the Super Bowl. Then a couple wild card losses, and then his last two seasons were 8-8 and 4-12. So his teams overall were 130, 93, and 1. But yeah, his last two seasons, he was 12 and 20, I guess. So maybe that was the catalyst. I think they thought maybe he had lost control of the locker room and stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and I think that was, yeah, then he went basically 1 year. The next year he went to the Chiefs, and he's had his worst record was 9-7 here.
Was that his first season?
That was his second season. So he was 11-5 the first year. And that was the year they lost to the Colts in that horrible wild card playoff game where they were up at like 38-6 or something. Was that the score? I think it was like 38-6, and they lost 45-44. And yeah, that was really bad. It was 31-10, 38-10. They're up 38-10 that game.
Yeah.
They lost 45-44 to but yeah, we went to that was the year that we went to the game in Kansas City about 2 weeks before that wild card game when they played Indianapolis at home, and they got blown out. We were trying to get into the stadium, right, and the Chiefs scored a touchdown on our way to our seats in that like frigid cold stadium where we had to like chip ice off the seats, and that turned out to be the only points the Chiefs scored all day, and it was a big loss to the Colts.
So we were bad luck, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well, what's Andy Reid's Chiefs record though?
His Chiefs record is 114-45 in the regular season, and then he's 9-7 in the postseason.
But has the most important win though.
Yeah. Since Mahomes has been the quarterback, he is 8-3 in the postseason.
Not bad.
That's pretty good.
Not bad at all.
Yeah. So overall, he is 19-16 in the postseason. So, and that's pretty good, I think, because losing, all those games are going to be tough, and even having a 500 record in the playoffs is.
Well, how many league championship series appearance?
Yeah, he's made it to 5 NFC championship games, and then 4 AFC championship games. So he's made it to 9.
Yeah, that's a pretty good track record.
I guess he's only won 3 of those and done 3 Super Bowls and just 1 and 2 in the Super Bowl. But yeah, 9 league title games is tough to beat.
A lot of kind of fluky things happen in an individual game, but getting to a league championship game is not necessarily very easy.
No,
but having gone there, 9 times is quite a feat for any coach. But yeah, maybe drifting back a bit to that last play of the New England Raiders game. That I think that was maybe one of the worst plays that has ever happened on an NFL field. Like, that was just totally absurd.
I've heard some.
The first lateral, I think, was fine.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
The second one
across the field, way back.
Was like it was over 10 yards in the field back, but it was probably like a 30-yard pass.
Yeah, I guess technically you could have thrown it to Mac Jones, and he could have thrown a forward pass still.
Yeah, it would have been across the line of scrimmage though. So
I don't know where he was standing. I guess
but the ball went across the line of scrimmage though already.
Does that matter?
I think that matters.
Does that matter? There hadn't been a forward pass.
I think once the ball crosses the line of scrimmage, I think that ends the pass opportunity, I believe. Because I know actually that's not true, because the player right? Oh, that came up with Mahomes, right? Because he had like his back foot was still behind the line of scrimmage when he threw it, and that was actually what mattered. The player had to be behind the line.
Mhm. Yeah,
That was
it says here,
question.
if the ball, whether in player possession or loose, crosses the line of scrimmage, a forward pass is not permissible, regardless of whether the ball returns behind the line of scrimmage before the pass is thrown. So yeah, so
Yeah.
so yeah, Jones, even if he had caught it, he could not have thrown the pass. But had he caught it and thrown a pass, at worst, it would have been like a 5 yard penalty or whatever.
Right.
So
And
it would have
then
been
that
an
would have
off.
ended regulation without losing the game.
Yeah, it would
But
have been an offensive penalty, so it would just been the end of the game.
yeah, but the backwards pass in that scenario there was only one person that could have gotten to it, and that was Mac Jones, right?
Yeah, and he's like the least athletic player on the team.
But every other player that was back in that area were defensive players,
Yeah, yeah, it was tough.
and they were all watching the play. It's not like they weren't paying attention, or they're all laying on the ground and just not participating. Um, but I mean, even if it was an incomplete pass, it's still a live ball because it's being lateraled. It's if Mac Jones doesn't catch it, but it bounces off of him and rolls away, it's still a live ball.
Yeah,
That's not it wouldn't be like an incomplete pass and
yeah,
play.
it's
And it was in the middle of the field too, so it wasn't like you could like kind of scoop it out of bounds or something just to end the play. Maybe the worst play I've ever seen anywhere. I
yeah,
mean, I don't even think you'd do that on in a field by your house if you're playing a game with your family at Christmas or at Thanksgiving or something, right? So,
yeah.
um,
And it's also like the way that play was run. It was just to run up the middle to end the game. Basically, they knew there's going to be no time on the clock, and I guess maybe if you think you can get a touchdown out of it, you're going to go for it. But like yeah, like you said, the
but
first
the
lateral
worst case
that wasn't a
scenario
that
is that
wasn't
it
really a
goes
big
to overtime, right?
yeah.
And then they're like, no, there's a worse scenario here. Let me show you. That
I've I've
was
heard some blame
unbelievable.
placed on now offensive coordinator Matt Patricia because he for some reason he's the New England offensive coordinator, or last like when he had been at New England before he was the defensive coordinator and been the a defensive line coach and stuff like that. But for some
Right.
reason he's the offensive coordinator in this go round.
That
Uh,
doesn't seem to make sense. Yeah. I mean, he's been a head
yeah,
coach now, but
he used to be a
still.
head coach, but he's still he was I guess he was the offensive line coach at one point.
Oh,
Wait, let me see. No, I'm looking ahead at his jobs. He was an offensive grad. He was an offensive assistant and assistant offensive line coach in 2005, 2004, 2005. Then he was the linebackers coach from '06 to 10, safeties coach, defensive coordinator, head coach. So I guess he had technically been on the offensive staff of the Patriots, but that was 16 years ago, 17 years ago.
but he was a defensive player himself, right?
He was a offensive lineman,
Oh, he
but
was. Oh, okay.
he didn't. But he only played in college. He didn't, and that was at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, so not a powerhouse. He was just a it's a
You
division.
don't consider that a powerhouse?
Maybe they're a Division 3 powerhouse. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, he played Division 3. He was a Division 3 offensive lineman as a center and guard.
Okay. Well, so I mean, if he was an offensive lineman, then he should know how offense works.
Yeah, so I guess by this point he knows how the offense and defense works. But I've seen some people say, well, maybe he was not coaching the finer details at the end of the game, maybe, or was paying like was not making sure all the X's and O's, the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed or whatever. But that seems it was just a very bizarre ending, and kind of ironic that the person who's considered to be one of the best or one of the best coaches of all time lost that game to perhaps one of the worst coaches in the NFL, his former assistant Josh McDaniels, because of that game. So
Yeah. Yeah. And he has like a crazy record against former assistants too, right? Doesn't Belichick have some absurd
Usually,
record against?
yeah, I think he's got. Let's look that up.
I remember hearing a stat from a couple of years ago about it that he usually just destroys his former assistants. Seemed like he took it personally. Like if they left and he did make sure that they knew that he was still smarter than whoever his former assistant was, right?
Oh no, it turns out. Oh, he did at one point, but
Yeah.
in the past 5 years. So he's currently. I don't know if this includes the Raiders game or not. It says he's 18-19 all time against former assistant coaches or players.
Wow. Oh, that's really changed.
In the past 5 years, he has won just 6 of 16 games. So he's six and a
Yeah.
half more recently. Um, so I guess um, a lot of those games I think come against Tennessee, where Mike Vrabel was the coach.
Right.
He technically wasn't a coach under Belichick; he was a player.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. Yeah.
But yeah, the McDaniels, the loss to, um, that loss I think is very. So I think you think that McDaniels is probably the worst head coach, or is he better, slightly better than Nathaniel Hackett? What's your assessment?
Well, I mean, Hackett's only had one go around, and McDaniel's is a twice failure, I think, at this point. So I would say McDaniel's is worse than Hackett,
Mhm.
but I don't think like Hackett should get another chance to do this again. I don't know what the point is. Like these guys don't seem to like understand how to be a head coach. It seems like there must be just something that's missing with that, or who they surround themselves with to be part of their staff. They just don't. They just can't do it at this level.
Yeah,
From what it seems like to me. Is that
I don't know.
different
Yeah,
from what you
this
see, or
this would have been. I think McDaniels is the Raiders were up 17-3 at halftime. I think it would have been like the fifth or fourth time that the Raiders lost a 2+ touchdown lead in the second half.
yeah? Wow.
Uh, to if they had lost that game. Um, so yeah,
Well, do you see this as a Raiders win or a New England loss, or just like a let's just get to next week and not worry about this? What happened in this
I
one?
see it more as a New England loss because New England lost it. Like you don't know what was going to happen, but New England lost it in such a spectacular way, and that loss probably cost them a chance at the playoffs because um, the Jets also lost. The Dolphins also lost in their division. They would have been 8-6. They would have. I don't know if they would have been on the inside of like what they would have been the seventh seed over the Dolphins or not. Or I guess it would just depend on the way the Chargers,
Hmm.
Dolphins, Patriots, 8-6 trio kind of
Yeah, we're two are
whatever.
in, one is out.
Two are in, one is out. And being 8-6, the Ravens are also maybe not doing quite as well, depending on you don't know when Lamar Jackson is going to come back.
Mm,
So had they been 8-6, their playoff chances would have looked a lot better than 7-7.
true.
And now they're tied to the Jets on the outside looking in. The Raiders and Jaguars are kind of moving up, even though I don't think really the Jaguars. I guess the Jaguars have the best chance because maybe they can go past the Titans to win the division, but um, I don't see.
Yeah, they're only a game back right now.
Yeah,
You see, right?
yeah, they're getting back to Tennessee, but they've lost both games against Tennessee.
So
So
they're essentially 2 games back
yeah, they don't have a tiebreaker.
with 3 games to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. The way the 7 teams that are currently in the AFC playoffs. So we have the Bills at the 1, Chiefs 2, Bengals 3, Titans 4 because they're divisional leader, and then Ravens, Chargers, Dolphins 5 through 7. Those are the teams that I see probably making it. I think those teams are all actually cut above better than the Patriots or Jets at 7-7, or the Jaguars, Raiders 6-8, Browns, Steelers 6-8 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Technically,
I'd like to see Jacksonville work their way into it, but I don't. It seems pretty tough if they, already have lost both games to Tennessee. That's going to make it really hard to get by them.
yeah, they lost. Let's see, I'll make sure that they have lost both games to Tennessee. I thought they did.
No, they played the Titans last game.
Oh, never mind, never mind. It's a lot better. They actually beat Tennessee the one time. So actually, they have a good
They
chance.
currently have the tiebreaker. So if they
currently have
they
the
win
tiebreaker.
again, they'll not just tie, but they'll take the lead. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd say, yeah, if the Jaguars win out, they're going to be in the playoffs
For sure.
because the
If they
Titans will
win
have
out.
the Titans will have 8 losses, and then the
Yeah.
Jaguars. Yeah, I don't know why I thought the Titans had lost twice to. I mean, the Titans had beaten the Jaguars twice.
No.
I was thinking of the Colts. Maybe I was thinking.
Maybe that's it.
I think I was thinking of the Colts because the Colts were the original favorite in the. Those the Colts or the Titans were the favorites in the South at the beginning of the season. Yeah, so the Jaguars only have to beat. Yeah, if they win out, I think they've got a really good chance.
And they've got it's at Jets, at Texans, and then Titans at home. So
Yes, yeah, if they win out,
that's
they'll be
looking a good
9-8.
chance. I think
If they
there are
win
much
out,
worse
yeah,
routes.
yeah. So yeah, so they will be 9-8. And so who do the Titans have left? They have the Texans at home against the Cowboys, at Jaguars. So their schedule's actually tougher
Mhm.
than
Because of the Cowboys, right?
because of the Cowboys. Because I guess you could say the Jets are
The other two games are common opponents between the two
yeah,
because they both have Houston left, and they both play, and they play each other, right? So
yeah. That Cowboys Titans game is going to be on the 20th. That's going to be a Thursday night game
ooh,
in Tennessee. So that could be, who knows what's going to happen in that game.
the Cowboys may not be playing for much in that position.
Yeah.
2 games to go. Their seed may be more or less locked
Yeah, basically,
because they're stuck outside the. They can't jump over the Eagles. So, well, I guess there's this very very slim chance, right?
yeah, it might not matter much for the Titans either because all the Titans have to do is
Beat Jacksonville.
beat Jacksonville. And if they happen, if they're, for example, if they're 8-7, if they beat Tennessee and they're 8-7 going in, and they can be 8-8 because the best Jacksonville going into that game would also be 8-8. So it doesn't really matter as much that game maybe for Tennessee. But yeah, that's an interesting scenario. Jacksonville. Do you want to get into the betting for last week? Talk about that.
Sure. Let's go quick maybe say a few things about like for the most interesting stories though, I do think Brock Purdy in San Francisco, I think, is maybe the most interesting, really, because it is third string quarterback. I think it'd be the first like third string quarterback to lead a team into the playoffs like this anyway. It's pretty interesting to see, just to see a team that's that good still, being able to perform well with, going to now a third option, I think is really interesting anyway.
Yeah, they've clinched the division. They are at least going to be the number 3 seed, and
With a chance possibly to move into the 2 seed.
yeah, depending on what
Minnesota,
the Vikings
maybe falters a little bit.
It depends on what the Vikings do.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whoever wins the NFC South is slated to be the number 4 seed no matter what.
Yeah.
And that team's going to have to probably going to play the Cowboys as the 5. And so in some ways, being the number 3 or 2 is a bigger advantage than being number 1 because unless So if say for example they're in the playoffs, the Cowboys are 5 and they win at number 4. If the favorites win on wild card weekend, it's the Cowboys who are the lowest seeded team. They're going to go to Philadelphia, and the 49ers would just have to play the Vikings.
Yeah.
So I think it might be advantageous to be where the 49ers are, no matter, especially if they could be the number 2 seed, because then the Vikings, so they would take care of the Commanders or Giants or whatever at home, and then as long as Minnesota didn't get upset,
Yep.
they would face the Vikings, which I
In
guess
San
is
Francisco.
it's a pretty real possibility that the Vikings get upset in the first round. But yeah,
And then they may end up like hosting the NFC Championship game if Dallas were to beat Philadelphia then too, right?
yeah.
So they could have home games all the way to Super Bowl appearance.
And as we've talked about, it makes a very interesting quarterback controversy in that what do you do? Do you get rid of get rid of Purdy, who's taking the team perhaps to at least NFC Championship game, maybe Super Bowl, in place of the unknown Trey Lance, or which I think I think you do get rid of Purdy at that point.
Yeah, I think his trade value would be the highest it could be. So it seems like another team may want him to be a starter, and
Yeah, because they've invested so much in Lance.
yeah,
But yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, it's somewhat a good problem to have, but I don't think if you're Trey Lance, you want to be in that situation either. Maybe getting rid of Lance might be the one. But
yeah,
Purdy,
yeah. It's gonna be really interesting to see what they do, especially if they go deep into the playoffs with.
like, let's say they go deep into the playoffs with Purdy, and then they have Lance as the starting quarterback the next year, and he doesn't do so well. That would just be that would be bad for the 49ers and bad for Lance.
Yeah, it's kind of bad for, and it makes them look not so good too, because they spent so much capital to get Lance, at a relatively high pick.
I think they traded 3 let's see, so the 49ers traded their 2021 pick for the Dolphins pick. So they exchanged picks, and then they gave 2 additional first round picks to Miami and a third round pick this year. So three high round draft picks, like it cost the 49ers
to move up to that position.
Yeah.
And the guy they're having the most success with is their very last pick in the most recent draft. Not the draft before.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think Kyle Shanahan has prided himself on not really needing a great quarterback in his offense, and they ended up spending all that money on what they thought would be a big time quarterback prospect, and that's been that hasn't paid off for sure.
Yeah, but actually going ahead and drafting a late round quarterback this year has very much paid off, though, right? Yeah. So maybe saving their season from what could be something, a big letdown anyway for what their expectation was going into the season.
So, but this next game, Brock Purdy, unless he really collapses, will have passed Lance in yardage in his career for the 49ers over Lance. So Lance has played.
Yeah, he only played like 2 games, didn't he, or 3
Lance
games?
has started 4 games.
Oh, 4, okay.
He's played in a total of 8 games, and he's thrown 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's thrown for 797 yards. Purdy has played in 6 games, started 2. He's already thrown 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, or only 2 interceptions, 678 yards. So it's only about 120 yards less. And his quarterback rating, Purdy so far is 100.6. Lance is 84.5. So he hasn't been too many games, but still, it's one of those things where Purdy's stats already, he actually has a rushing touchdown as well, where Lance does not. Where Lance only has 1, too. So they're tied in number of rushing touchdowns.
Yeah,
Lance has a lot more yards rushing than Purdy does, but
crazy.
yeah, it's been a.
I heard too that it was like touchdown passes of over 25 yards. I think Garoppolo had 1 this season in the 7 games that he started, and Purdy has 4 in the 2.
Yeah, I think it was I think it was actually just of 25 yards exactly too. So I think it was it was let me look up his stats.
But still, that's pretty. I mean, that is pretty crazy to have started that many games, and the touchdowns that were thrown were relatively short or rushing touchdowns, right? But they're not. I mean, they're not a heavy quarterback. Required. They're not requiring a whole lot from their quarterback. They're winning games with defense and controlling the ball.
Garoppolo did throw. He threw a 38-yard touchdown pass to. You'll never guess to whom. It was to tight end Ross Dwelly.
Oh,
so it was not George Kittle.
Not Kittle, yeah, because I think Kittle caught 2 relatively long touchdown passes from Purdy in this last game. So
and it was the pass went 16 yards in the air. There was in November. This is early November. Christian McCaffrey also threw for a 30+ yard touchdown pass.
Oh
wow. There was a stat before Purdy came. Touchdown passes thrown 30+ yards downfield for the 49ers in the past 3 seasons. Christian McCaffrey 1, Trey Lance 1, CJ Beathard 1.
Wow.
Jimmy Garoppolo 0.
Wow, 0.
It didn't travel in the air far enough, I guess.
Oh wow.
But I guess you can't just blame long touchdown passes, because I think Mahomes' long touchdown pass is only 50 yards this year or something. So it's
yeah.
But yeah, Purdy has run the offense capably, and it seems like just as capably as so far as anyone else. I guess we'll see when they get to the playoffs, but it's not like Purdy has played the worst teams in his 2 starts. That was he played both 2 teams that were both contending for playoff position, and in Tampa Bay and Seattle, but
division rival in the last game, and
yeah,
I think they controlled the game pretty well, and I think they gave up a relatively late touchdown, but still won by 8. Thinking this one was 20.
And I guess he also played most of the game against the Dolphins, or I don't remember when Garoppolo went down.
I think it was pretty early. Yeah.
Yeah, he played most of the game against the Dolphins.
First drive, I think. Yeah.
So, yeah, Garoppolo only attempted 4 passes against Miami. So,
yeah, I think Miami had, or the 49ers had like a pretty long drive. So it may have been like near the end of the first quarter, even, because I think it was I don't know, 9 or 10 play drive before Garoppolo went down, and I think they missed the field goal, and then Purdy took over. I think that's how that went. But yeah. So what did you think about the Chiefs victory?
The Chiefs game. I think the Chiefs, they dominated that game statistically, and I think the score was. I don't want to get into the conspiratorial talk that sometimes you are, but I think the fact that they were against, they were against Carl Cheffers as the referee did not help them, because Cheffers is, it seems like, is biased against the Chiefs, and I think this has been the case since the a playoff game where the Chiefs lost. You remember this game where the Chiefs lost to the Steelers, and they had tied the game or they're going to win it, but there was like a holding call on a 2-point conversion or a winning touchdown that was pretty iffy, and it cost the Chiefs the game. And after the game, Kelsey was really mad and said that Jeffers shouldn't even be allowed to work at Foot Locker after this game.
You shouldn't be allowed to wear the striped shirt. Not even if you worked at Foot Locker.
Yeah, and that was like 6 years ago now, or 5 years ago, and before Mahomes was the quarterback, even before Mahomes was on the team, I think.
Yeah.
And I think since then, Jeffers has had it out for the Chiefs, and
do you think that quote had something to do with it, or
I wouldn't be surprised.
I did look up. I looked up a couple of things. I did find NFLpenalties.com. Did you know this website existed?
No.
Where actually accounts for each penalty. And there are lots of ways to sort the statistics. I've just been interested to see like what's been called against the Chiefs like across the season anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like what the kind of like, penalties that show that a team isn't necessarily like well disciplined would show up most in like a false start call, like where they're not actually like together.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs like rarely get called for false starts. Only 5 false start calls all season against the Chiefs. League average 15 false start calls per team. And delay of game only twice this season have the Chiefs been called for delay. And I think the other one was that I was looking at was illegal formation. They've been called for twice.
That's surprising. Usually, I think of them as getting called a decent amount for that. I mean, maybe that's in years past.
And illegal motion only once too. So like those are kinds of like metrics that I think you can look at for like how together a team, how well coached a team is, and they're like far ahead of what the league average is in those types of penalties. But man, when it comes to like holding and defensive pass interference, I mean they get just hit hard constantly on those. They've been called for 11 defensive pass interference calls. League average is 6, I guess. But it's cost them 200 yards on the season for defensive pass interference. And like you had mentioned, I believe, the Chiefs always get called for one particular type of defensive pass interference, so they don't turn. And the other team never seems to get called for that. You are correct. Because opponents have only been called for defensive pass interference against the Chiefs twice this season, while the Chiefs have been called 11 times.
Yeah, and that seems like I don't think the Chiefs throw the ball 5 times fewer than their opponents. I think they throw the ball probably as much as their opponents do.
As much or more, even.
Yeah, and that's surprising. I guess watching the games, it's not that surprising, but I see that in the the Chiefs, it says they have, in terms of net yardage this year, I'm looking at that website right now.
Yeah.
In terms of net yardage, the Chiefs are minus 111 in terms of net yardage.
Well, now I believe that was almost exactly the number of yards they were called for in the last game.
Yeah. They have been called. Only 73 penalties have been called against them compared to 83 for opponents.
That's a low total, but I think it's skewed by the fact that they're not actually doing false starts, and they're not doing that type of penalty, which most teams are probably getting more of those calls against them.
Yeah,
and they do have a really high number of penalties on special teams. I think they had like 15 of their 73 penalties were on special teams, which only is only one play at a time that
Mhm.
special teams is on the field, you know?
Yeah, it seems like they get a special teams.
So,
I'd say half of the uh, punt or kickoff returns that the Chiefs
well,
have
in this last game, they were called for a holding call on a punt that was just wasn't even returned. It was just a fair catch, and they still called it a holding somewhere along the line. They never showed it, so we couldn't actually see what it looked like. But yeah, I think if I were giving a recommendation to the Chiefs about how to handle special teams, would be never return the ball. There's no benefit with the way the officials have called things against the Chiefs specifically, seemingly. They should never return the ball. Fair catch everything. Don't hold anybody. Don't block anybody. Just get a fair catch and get off the field. Let the offense go to work, and not from 10 yards behind where they should have had the ball had they not tried to return it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's yeah. I don't even see. Yeah, they shouldn't even put a person back there because they've dropped like Sky Moore's dropped I think 3 punts so far, and I think there have been some trouble. Like, why even bother trying to return the punt? There's nothing,
Yeah.
especially if you don't have like Hardman back there or somebody who's because he's been hurt a lot. I think stay up on the line of scrimmage, make sure they don't fake it,
Right.
and maybe have a guy sort of back there. Just let him punt it, and it doesn't matter if the field is slightly shorter if you have Patrick Mahomes. And I
Yeah.
don't. I
But
would say
the
they've
only thing you don't want to do is make it even harder for them, though. So there's no reason to push yourself back like inside the 5, unless they just punt it to the 5. That seems to be the only way. I don't know why they bother trying to return anything, because it's just they just get called for everything no matter what, and then the other teams don't seem to get called for the same type of play against the Chiefs. I sort of get it if you look at you know at an individual matchup. You'd think teams that have good records probably aren't going to get as many calls against them as teams that have bad records. But
Mhm.
if there's a big discrepancy in an individual game with a very good team against a very not good team, that maybe you throw a few extra calls just to make sure the better team doesn't like run away with the game, because you don't want the game to just be awful if it's on television, right?
Yeah.
So like I can see that, but like this last game was one of the worst officiating performances I've ever seen. There was no consistency at all to it. And there was like a 2 drive sequence where there were something like 8 calls that were questionable, and all of them went against the Chiefs. I just don't see what the Chiefs have done to not, get some calls in their favor occasionally, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it was yeah, yeah, I think the NFL officiating is notoriously bad, and I think it's been worse this season than last. Because I think we talked off the air about the end of the Giants Commanders game of pass interference that probably should have been called,
Terrible. No call.
and
Yeah.
and it seems like a lot of there have been and the Chiefs seem like they've had some memorable calls go against them.
Mm.
With the Chris Jones roughing the passer when he stripped the ball, the Chris Jones saying something mean to Matt Ryan when that kind of cost the Chiefs the game, and so I don't. Yeah, it seems like the officiating and like all these pass interference penalties.
Yeah.
Even given the fact that the Chiefs secondary is pretty young, I think you can say, well, they're going to maybe have a little bit more than the other team, but.
They got Frank Clark offsides again, lined up offside again in this game.
Yeah.
Did you think he would have not do that anymore?
Clark is, yeah, he had a good game otherwise. And he forced. I think he forced the fumble that.
Right. There were a couple of really questionable calls in the overtime that did go the Chiefs' way, but they should never have been in overtime.
Was the what was the was Mills, was he down when the fumble occurred? Was that the close call, or is it
Well, the
the
recovery on the
recovery?
fumble was maybe not recovered by the Chiefs because it looked like one official was going to call it,
Hmm.
um, that the Texans had recovered it, but I know Willie Gay apparently grabbed the ball and came out of the pile and paraded it around the
Yeah,
stadium,
yeah,
um, as a bit of showmanship. And
yeah. I saw that.
he made some comment. Did you read the comments that he had made after about?
No,
He said that he knew that what he was supposed to do was to grab the ball, show it to everybody there. So if the refs call it the other way, everybody knows that he's the one that came out of the pile with it, to try to keep the refs honest.
yeah,
It wasn't about like, trying to.
yeah. It looked like the Texans player got on it, but like it didn't necessarily mean that he was like had his hands on it. He was just kind of over it.
He was like, apparently it was like sitting on it, and Gay like took it from underneath him
Yeah, he was
and
like had it
scooped
between
it
his legs or
away.
something. And
Yeah.
yeah, and that's one of those things where whoever comes out with it usually,
Usually, but they can call whatever they want, and then it's hard to review it
it's hard to
because,
overturn unless there's a clear.
yeah. And so they didn't really go into it too much, and they didn't review it. So they went ahead and said it was the Chiefs' ball, but that they could have done if they were as corrupt as I claim that they are sometimes. They could have just given the ball to the Texans, and then I would be very outraged.
I don't think they're. Yeah, I think they're just. I think it's more incompetence than corruption, and I do think maybe there's a little bit of animosity that Jeffers has against the Chiefs because of some of the comments the Chiefs have made in the past.
Yeah.
Um,
Well
that
then, just don't be terrible at your job. Is that not? Is
yeah,
that not how?
I don't think he called any. I don't think there were any penalties called against Kelsey this past game. So maybe that.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah. Well, it isn't necessarily him. It's his crew, though, right? So
yeah, yeah,
he doesn't necessarily have control over everybody on the crew. It's just
yeah, that's true.
unless he actually is the one throwing the flag on all the plays. But
Yeah, he gets holding and the roughing the passer. Those are, I guess there was a bit of a Mahomes got kind of tossed around in one of his sacks that it seems like the Chiefs tend to get called roughing on those plays, and
yeah.
um, Mahomes doesn't seem to get the
Oh,
benefit of it.
Kelsey did get a personal foul call against him
Oh, he
earlier
did. Yeah, that's right.
on a total nonsense call too, because like the defensive player like was like actually holding Kelsey down, so he was like trying to get up and he pushed him back to the ground,
Yeah,
and then Kelsey like kind of pushed him back, and but no punches were thrown. The flag shouldn't actually have been thrown in that case. It just depends on what official sees it and is offended by whatever happened, and then you know there are too many judgment calls, I think, is my point here. And I don't think the refs are qualified to make judgment calls. I think the rules should be drawn out in a more non-judgment call way.
yeah,
Because like I don't like maybe they shouldn't call personal fouls unless you know a punch is thrown or something like to that effect, right? Because like
yeah.
sometimes like teams kind of get into like pushing matches and they don't throw flags on everybody that push somebody,
Hmm.
and that's basically what that scenario was with Kelsey. I don't I don't think they're qualified to make judgment
Yeah.
calls. Even
Yeah,
though
I
that
think
is
there
their
should.
actual job is to make judgment.
Yeah, I think there should be more review, or there should be more of a kind of emphasis on like full-time employment as a referee rather than like let them be dentists or whatever in the off season and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still the case. That was they they've used officials are the officials are considered to be part-time employees of the NFL, so they don't get insurance and crap like that. So I think that also hurts the NFL if they paid them a little, like if they were like cheap and chintzy on the those things. They don't have insurance. They do have 401k, I guess, but um, they don't. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of.
There has to be some way to make the officiating better without having to do much. Like, it just doesn't make sense how does the sport have integrity as a sport if the games are officiated this poorly? Like, what? I don't understand how, almost in to some extent, that it's even a valid sport. Does this win mean anything? Like, is it just, were they just given it by the officials, or I mean, it was almost taken from them by the officials. Was it almost was it just given to them by the officials in the overtime then, by having that fumble be awarded, because they won on the very next play? So, all right, there's very little integrity.
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
NFL.
Yeah, the NFL referees, they were going to make transition to some of them be full-time league employees. That was shelved in 2019. So all of the officiating rosters are part-time employees. But looks like referees at least make up to $250,000 a year
For 18 days of work. That's
yeah,
fine.
which isn't bad. But I think also I don't think this is the case, but I think simply because gambling is more involved with the NFL as time has gone on, it looks bad for officiating to be so bad because people will assume that there's some sort of fix in
Yeah.
if it and I guess partly you can't, even good calls are going to be half the people are going to be upset some of the time, but it's it's just not very well done, I think. And when you have like the the analysts, the former officials who are like looking in the booth afterwards saying, well, that was a bad call, this was a bad call, that was that why can't these things be fixed in some way, or some sort of mitigated, and
Just have some accountability for it. I mean, the leagues have fined players that committed a foul that wasn't called a foul on the field, but nothing happens to the referees. They don't get scolded or publicly shamed for making bad calls, or encouraged to be better by some kind of incentive.
Yeah, I think there should
or
be like
disincentive for making calls that they don't want to see. I mean, I have much more faith in like the legitimacy of mixed martial arts and the UFC. They actually suspend officials if they do something that's questionable. So like, and it's that they've been suspended, like they're not on TV if they I don't know.
Yeah, it would be nice if they had like a percentage correct, like calls correct or something like that versus incorrect. And like say, well, this like what baseball does with when we had the umpire that had the perfect game in World Series.
Yeah.
Do you remember the umpire's name of the perfect game? We've talked about it twice now.
Yep, and you reminded me the name, and I don't remember it again.
It's Pat Hoiberg.
Very
similar to Fred Hoiberg, the mayor of Ames, but Pat Hoiberg. So they could do something like that, I think, and like I think that's what they do technically. Like it's like a proprietary kind of inside sort of thing. Like they reward the officials they think have done the best job to give them like Super Bowl jobs and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think if that were more public, the acknowledgement of here was an error, here was maybe you could say question, like you could even say correct, questionable, wrong, or something like that. And
they need to be getting report cards like on a game-to-game basis.
Yeah.
So that by the end of the season, they either increase their performance, or they don't get to come back next year or next week even. But Yeah. How would you grade Carl Scheffer's performance in this last game?
I didn't get to see much of the game
No.
at all, but given the number of, I think it tends to be, and from what I've heard, it seems like the Texans. It's not like the Texans were playing a game that was completely above board and by the book and against the rules. There seemed to be a lot of kind of cheap shots and things like that that they were doing, and they weren't getting called. So it wasn't like
They're holding players down, pushing them down after they're trying to get up,
yeah.
stuff like that. That happened like the whole game.
I think
Usually
they're
they try to like get that to knock that off early, so
yeah.
they control so there aren't fights. Basically, that's really one of the main reasons why the referees are there, isn't it?
It's a physical presence. Yeah, I think in general, most games, the number of penalties committed by each team is going to be about even. And that maybe there are occasional games where one side is doing things much worse than the other side, but it didn't seem like, from what I saw, that the Chiefs were much worse than the Texans were.
And they're the better team on the field too. So it's like there's no reason to try to make the Chiefs look bad on the field. They hadn't had that many penalties called against them this season either.
Yeah, but given that the game turned out so close, I'm glad I did not bet on the Chiefs cover.
True. They didn't come even close to covering.
We did much better on our bets this week.
You did
last week, and this was a triumphant week for me. As I went 3-0 on my bets, and you did
Perfecto.
Not too bad at 2-1. Maybe before we talk about our winning bets, do you want to talk about your lone loser on the week, and whom do you blame? The teams or yourself?
So my one losing bet was the one that I tend to not go with bigger spreads, and I did take Philly -9 at Chicago, and they did not cover that. They did win, but they did not cover. And so who do I blame for that? I think like Jalen Hurts' injury, I think probably is what maybe had an effect on it, because I think he was injured at the end of the third quarter. He finished the game out, but I don't think he was 100%. And so that's probably what it was. They won by 5.
Yeah, they won 25-20.
Yeah, and I think they held the ball out to the end of the game too, so they didn't need to score. They were just holding. They just sat on it. I think
They were up 25-13 after Hurts in the fourth quarter ran for a touchdown pass. And then there was also a 2-point conversion afterward that put them up 25. Or was it 23-13 then a safe? Was there a safety? No, there was a 2-point conversion. There was 25. It was a touchdown run and then a 2-point conversion run by Hurts to make it 25-13.
Yeah.
And then there was a later touchdown.
Former Chief Byron Pringle.
Yeah, Byron Pringle.
35-yard touchdown reception from Justin Fields. Former Chief Cairo Santos for the extra point. So I guess I have to more directly blame former Chiefs.
And much of that team is Matt Nagy's roster. And
former Cyclone David Montgomery had 2 rushing touchdowns.
And current Bears GM is Ryan Poles, who was a Chiefs executive before moving on to the Bears. So the current GM and the former coach of the Bears. So you could blame the Chiefs for promoting your success.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the Eagles did win, but I think this is just more of a week of, underperformance of good teams against bad teams, artificial or not. I don't know. I didn't watch that one.
And Hurts was hurt, but
he did still rush for the last touchdown in the.
Yeah. Do you think that they're using Hurts too much as a runner, and that might hurt, no pun intended, the Eagles' playoff chances?
Yeah, for sure. I know. I think that was his highest rushing attempts on the season was in that game.
Yeah,
And
this
he,
is
and he was
17 carries, 61 yards,
and he was
two
hit a
rushing
lot
touchdowns.
apparently too, as a quarterback. So I mean, I don't know why you want to take that many hits, so many chances at getting injured, and then now has a sprained shoulder from what I heard. Uh, yeah, I don't like seeing quarterback take hits. I don't like seeing Mahomes take a single hit if you don't have to. So, but rushing the ball 17 times, like you're bound to take somewhere in the area in the vicinity of 17 hits in that game. Does that sound right?
Yeah, if you speaking
Why do
of
that?
yeah, speaking of Jalen Hurts running too much, the Philadelphia newspaper, Philadelphia Inquirer, um, there was an article that was written just after the game. It says Jalen Hurts' MVP hopes die after Eagles coaches put him at risk too often. They ran him, so he's injured, out for 2 games, maybe more. They say so. Goodbye MVP. Goodbye. They were running him too much, especially since they thought that Miles Sanders was doing well running the ball. Why not let the running back run the ball?
Do actually do his job.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, Sanders only had 11 carries to Hurts 17. That's
yeah.
seems like a little bit of a waste.
And it says, yeah, the Eagles have been pushing. This is another Yahoo Sports article. The Eagles have been pushing their luck all year with Jalen Hurts. Too many carries, too many hits. Hurts has 156 rushing attempts this year, third most in NFL history, behind Lamar Jackson in 2019, 2020.
Behind Lamar Jackson and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jackson, of course, lately has been injured a lot more than he was early on in his career.
I mean, you'd think RG3 being the most easily pointed to, of the Russian quarterback, sort of like a story, I guess, to, you know,
Yeah,
don't do that. There's
yeah,
no reason to do that, especially if he can throw, and he is decent at throwing. So,
and I think you have that with
yeah.
Cam Newton as well. He fell off a cliff after six like 7 or 8 years in the league,
Hmm.
and you have Josh Allen. It seems like probably that might happen to him too. You can't keep running it as a quarterback for very long. Your
You're
career is
gonna
not.
get hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, why do they now draft running backs so low? It's because
Yeah, because
they don't.
they're
Huh?
expendable. Their careers are shorter. Yeah, I think um, maybe it's a recipe for winning this year for the Eagles,
Hmm.
but I don't think it is long term. It's going to be successful in the long term.
Yeah. Well, that was my loss. What was
Mhm.
your? You were only win. So what was your first? What was your least glorious win, Mike?
I think my least glorious win, for my opinion, is the one I thought was probably going to happen the most, and that was the Lion. I thought the Lions would beat the Jets. Um, for some reason, that was a an even number pick 'em game where the Lions were at the Jets, but it was the Jets with Zach Wilson rather than Mike White. And Wilson has been not a very good quarterback this year. The Lions were surging. I don't think the Lions, and it ended up being a close game. I thought that the Jets might pull it up, but the Lions won by a field goal, 20-17. So that was my. I think that was the game I was perhaps most confident about going in. I really didn't think the Jets were going to win, and they actually kept it closer than I thought.
It was late too. It was 51-yard touchdown pass with a minute 49 to go for the Lions to pull off the win.
Yeah, it was the only touchdown pass of the day for Jared Goff. So,
Yeah, because they had a punt return and a couple of field goals. It's all right.
and it was the only touchdown pass caught by Brock. It was the only pass all day, caught by Brock Wright, the tight end.
Wow.
So it was yeah, a bit of a unusual combination, but yeah, I thought the Jets have a good defense, but I didn't think um yeah, I didn't see the Jets as I think the Jets have overachieved this year. I think
Yeah.
they're currently 7-7, same as the Lions, but I think the Lions 7-7 record is a stronger 7-7 than the Jets.
Well, the Lions seem to be, coming up on 7-7, and the Jets are on their way, falling to 7-7 too.
Yeah, the Jets at one point they were 7-4. They lost their last three.
Yeah.
6-3 before that. They had been 5-2. Yeah, they had yeah, they've come back to earth. I think I think you need a decent quarterback, and I don't. And White was their best quarterback, and he hasn't been playing. So Russell, I don't think Zach Wilson is the answer, but who knows long term?
Because White was injured this week.
Yeah, White was injured. Yeah, he got injured in the Bills. I think he has also been ruled out for the Thursday night game.
That game also had like what I enjoy seeing in the win probability charts, where it's like the game sort of like middles along, or both teams have like the odds flip back and forth, and like the Jets scored a very late touchdown, so it goes way towards the Jets side with like 4 minutes to go, and then all the way to the other side when the Lions score late.
Yeah, it's one of those heart attack kind of look.
Like the end of the Bills Chiefs playoff game last season was back and forth. Seemed like near 100% to either's oscillating between both sides.
Yeah, that was the craziest, one of the craziest games ever, for sure. It seems like the Chiefs games are always, even when they're playing teams like the Titans, the Texans, they are lose. They play these very close games where it seems like they have a very low probability of winning sometimes. So that was the Lions Jets. I thought, it was closer than me I thought it was going to be, but the Lions still pulled it out. What about your win? What was your first win?
First one was a game we already talked about. The San Francisco, favored by 3.5 points, defeated Seattle by 20-12, and that got me that was actually my first game of that week anyway. So that was the my first win anyway.
Yeah, they won by 8. 20, I think was it 21-13? Was that the score? 21-13.
12, maybe 13 or 12. Yeah.
Yeah, 21-13. I say
13. It was 13. Yeah.
So it was a
21-13. Yes.
Yeah.
There it is.
I thought maybe that it was a late touchdown by the
Seahawks
to get it even that close. So it wasn't close most of the game.
Yeah.
That was we talked about I think both the we'll talk a little more about the Seahawks this week when I talk about my bets this week. But Brock Purdy victory, covering the spread. He's in the last 3 games where he's played, I think he's covered each of the last 3 weeks.
That's right.
He's an automatic.
You have to keep riding that, right?
Well, maybe we should have. Speaking of
what was your mediumist glory victory this week, Mike?
Well, I'm gonna say, some people might count this as the best win that I had, but I think in terms of what happened, the way the game turned out, I think the least likely was my third pick. But this one was the Jags. I picked Jaguars plus 4.5 over Dallas. That game went to overtime. I thought the Jaguars would keep it close. It was in Jacksonville. Dallas was coming off big victories. I think they're looking ahead to next week, looking ahead to Philadelphia, and I think that's what happened a little bit. But also Jacksonville's surging. They might win. They might win the division, and they had a pick 6 in overtime to win the game by 6. Thus, covering by 10.5 points on
Handily
the spread.
covering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
handily covering. Yeah, basically the only thing that would have sunk me was a Cowboys touchdown to outright win. So the game itself was close most of the game.
Well, it started to look like it could get out of hand in the third quarter.
Yeah,
Dallas went up 27-10
that's true.
at
Yeah,
one point. And then yeah, Jacksonville came roaring back to
yeah,
actually take the lead 31-27.
31-27. Yeah, yeah, it's actually seemed I thought it was last time when I was looking at it, I thought, well, Jacksonville's keeping it close, but then yeah, Dallas opened up a fairly big lead, 27-10.
Yeah.
And then Jacksonville came roaring back. I thought Jacksonville actually might win it in regulation, but Dallas came ahead again, and I thought then actually Dallas might win by 30, win in 34-31, but
That would still be okay.
it'd still be fine. I was still within.
Yeah.
So yeah, as the fourth when we got into the fourth quarter, it looked pretty good for me, but you never know what's going to happen. So I felt yeah, early on I felt a little bit nervous, but as the game went on, it seemed like Jacksonville was crawling back into it, and they ended up winning it outright. So Trevor Lawrence had another big game. He threw 4 touchdowns, only 1 interception. So Prescott didn't play bad either, but it was yeah, the
Pick six did have been though.
pick six did have been, yeah. And he had 2 kind of bad picks. One was and in terms of total yardage, Jacksonville had over 500 yards of total offense during the game. Not that Dallas did badly; they had almost 400 themselves. But yeah, it was a even though the score was a little bit lopsided for a little while, the game was closer than that looked like it. And then yeah, so I was pleased with Jaguars hanging close, and then extra pleased when they won outright over the Cowboys.
Yeah.
How about your second?
And kept their playoff chances alive too.
Kept their playoff chances, and as we talked about, yeah, I was thinking they had to beat the Titans record by 1 game, but now they only have to if they finish 9-8 and beat the Titans, they can be in it. I guess if both the Titans and the Jaguars finish 8-9, the Jaguars still, if the Jaguars win the final game of the season, that will put them in the playoffs. How about your final pick?
My final pick followed the game itself. Followed a very close trajectory with this game. I think too was I had maybe it was more split from half, not into the third quarter anyway. But I had Cincinnati -3.5 at Tampa. Tampa dominated the first half. I think they're up like 17-0, and then in the second half was all Cincinnati. And that game, I know I was worried about it anyway. But you know, as it was happening. And then the second half, happened. Cincinnati like doubled up their score by mid fourth quarter and you know covered the spread quite handily.
Yeah, it was 17-0, then 17-3 at halftime, and then Cincinnati rattled off 34 straight points, and then there was a fairly meaningless touchdown at the end by Tampa.
Yeah. So the bet wasn't wasn't threatened from the fourth quarter at any point in the fourth quarter. So that was nice to have after being a little worried in the first half.
31 second half points for the Bengals really helped you out there.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt.
I think the Bengals are a really good team, unfortunately for the Chiefs. But that maybe next week is going to be a big game, or not this coming week, but the week after is going to be the Bills at the Bengals, and that might really determine whether the Chiefs can get home field advantage or not.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, what would before we aren't looking at the lines for that game? What do you think of the Bills at Bengals? What would you say the spread would be? Do you think the Bills would be favored or Cincinnati?
I would think. Ooh, that's going to be really close. It might be. It might be about even. My guess is what the line would be. I would say that would be an even line, but I think reality, I think Cincinnati should be favored. I don't think Buffalo's been playing quite as well the last few weeks. They've been struggling a bit at times, and I mean they still won their most recent game, but it wasn't dominant by any means against Miami. So my guess of what the line would be, I would say I would be I pick them right
Pick
now.
'em. So you
Or
would say
Cincinnati
on a
minus
neutral
12.
field, you'd pick Buffalo by a couple of points.
Um. Oh yeah, no, it is that. It is at Cincinnati, isn't
That's
it?
Cincinnati.
Yeah. Okay. It's at Cincinnati. Yes, that's right. That's right. I'll stick with that. Is there a really line already?
Let's see. Bills. It is. I'm looking at 538 right now, and their spread is pick that they predict.
Yeah.
And it's because it's Monday. It's Monday night game at Cincinnati. So there's an early line.
I don't think. Yeah, I think ESPN doesn't show a line until Monday. So after the previous week's game is completed, I think. Then they show, if that's what you use to look at.
Yeah, I'm looking at a line. I see Bills -6 right now, but I don't think that can be right.
I don't know.
No, that's Cincinnati at Buffalo. That's a different game. That's an old game. Yeah. Here we go. The odds are too soon for this other one, so it'll
Yeah. I
yeah,
think they wait till after this week's games are over.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I could see it. We'll talk about that when we get talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So going from that potential clash of the Titans, we have instead my third bet, which was my favorite victory of the week. It was the clash of the.
I was going to ask you what's the opposite of Clash of the Titans? The skirmish of the
yes, yes.
of the
Some sort of
plebeians, something like that.
a skirmish of the diminutives or something, and I don't. I didn't want to say midget or anything. But some sort of maybe a kind of hobbit slap fight. Maybe would be.
Roll with it.
Yeah, that was the Broncos versus at home against the Cardinals. It was the over under was the 37.5 was the over under line, and I picked the over because I thought, well, even the Broncos led by Brett Ribbon and the Cardinals led by Colt McCoy, they could muster a game that would be 21-17 or something like that. And I was really worried for most of the game because it wasn't until
Trace McSorley got into the game.
Yeah, it wasn't until Trace McSorley got into the game that there was a lot of offense. So it was 6-3 at halftime.
Right.
Good. And it was 10-9 at the end of the it was 10-9, like almost at the end of the third quarter. And
yeah.
It was 10-9 at the end of the third quarter, and then there were 20 points scored in the fourth quarter. It was 10-9 at the end of the third, Denver, and then Denver scored 2 touchdowns, and the Cardinals scored a touchdown as well, and did not convert the extra point. So that even without an extra point, a missed 2-point conversion, I still covered. It was 24-15. Broncos over the Cardinals. So I had a 39. I had 1 point to spare for my victory. I could have, yeah. So 24-15. So that was my proudest victory where
Yeah.
I usually don't like betting overs. I tend to like betting unders, but this year,
And that's kind of a contrarian bet too, because that it looks like one that you might take an under on because those two teams are struggling to score points.
yeah, and that's what they wanted. I figured that's what they wanted. They were
Yeah.
probably going to keep moving it lower and lower and still wanting people to take the under. And I thought, um, I just thought it's a high altitude. I think Brett Rippon seemed to move the ball pretty well when he was playing the Chiefs, and I didn't. Well, it ended up being sort of by the skin of my teeth, but I was emerged victorious out of that game, and I rang up a 3-0 week, my first 3-0 week in a very long time, and where does that put us on the year so far?
So you are now only one game under 500 after our really quite bad starts. Yeah, you're up to a 22-23 now, only down $100 on the whole season, or 100 divided by 15.
Less, it's just a little over $6.
Just over
$6.66 per week I've lost.
Yeah, not so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 22-23 minus $100. I'm just behind you, 21-23 in that one push, for minus $200.
$200. So we've lost about 13. You've lost about $13 a week. I've only lost less than $7 a week. So but we both have the shot of going over 500 in week 16 for our season total, and then I think we can maybe, if we carry that on to the end of the year, we have 3 more weeks, including this week of betting. We can maybe declare victory.
We have been approaching this for quite some time, so
yeah, it seems like as we get closer, we get knocked back down again, and then we have to.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. But I think this is the closest either of us have been to 500 since the very first week.
It's been a while, yeah. Feels good.
I know. I started somewhere like around 4 and 8, I think, after week 3, somewhere in that area. Yeah, so
I think we've
three and something. I don't know. 3 and 6, and then
we really honed our system,
something like that. Yeah,
as time has gone on.
Yeah. I think there's just more uncertainty at the very beginning of the season because you don't know which teams are going to be predictable. There's just more uncertainty, less predictability early on.
Yeah, I think that tends to be the case too. Also, though, now with injuries, and I think the NFL is just a very unpredictable league in general, and that's part of, I guess, some of the fun for
especially when you're not just having to pick an outcome, win or lose. It's win by an amount, or score more than or less than a certain number of points, right?
Yeah, you can see why it's so difficult to be a professional gambler.
Well, what's the I was looking at this because I think you mentioned something about this, the percentage of correct bets that a professional gambler has isn't nearly as high as you'd expect.
I think you need to, if you're playing, so if you have the juice of minus 110 or whatever for most of the spreads, I think you need to get about 54% of your picks right to end up making money, because some of the money you lose. So like really the way the bet would work is you bet $110 to make $100 on most of these spreads. So losing the this is really how Vegas makes their money, by making those like kind of like
it's not even odds,
right? Like the roulette, like roulette we talked about. You put it back up. You think red and black is 50-50, but you have only you probably have a 48% chance of getting red versus, or 48% chance of getting black.
Right.
Those two, green zeros that
0 and the double 0.
yeah, that'll work against you. So you have to be a little bit, yeah. So they didn't start Las Vegas so so people could make money. They did so they could make money, and usually they get the better of it. And traditionally, I think the most common bet is for the favorite and
Mhm.
for the over. Those are the two. So if you bet against those, sometimes you can make
I'll
money.
have to
But
pull
sometimes
these
the
stats
favorites win.
together when we get to the end of the year to see what our common bets were and what our records were on those types of bets. So
Yeah,
I'll try to get that together at
oh, that'd be great.
after the last
Yeah.
week.
Of course, I'm betting all favorites
Only
and
favorites.
overs this week. Two favorites and an over. But
Ooh, I've got I don't have anything that's the same on these, and I'm betting a pick'em, a favorite, and an over, or and an under.
ooh,
Yeah,
we'll talk about these bets in a second. Do you want to briefly talk about the World Cup
yeah. Let's do it.
final? Last week I made a Nostradamus-esque prognostication in predicting that France would beat Morocco in the semifinal, 2-0 to make it to the final of the World Cup. We knew Argentina was going to make it when we filmed this last week. So it's going to be Argentina against either Morocco or France. I think the world is probably happy that France, other than people in Morocco, people were happy that France won because it turned out to be a really great game, especially by World Cup and international soccer standards. It turned out to be a 3-3 game, even though I guess three of those goals in regulation and extra time were penalty kick goals, which I guess some people like for the drama. I don't think any of those penalties were. I don't think any of them were seen as particularly controversial, but
Yeah,
um, the way it ended, where it was, I think, a Mbappe penalty kick in like the 118th minute to tie it, send it to penalty kicks at the end, was, you know, could be a little questionable, but
yeah.
then settling it by penalty kicks is another way that I'm not terribly fond of, but it's just that's the way it happens. And Argentina won on the penalty kicks, I think 4-2 on penalty kicks. So 3-3 game. Argentina wins on penalty kicks. I think it was the first penalty kick shootout deciding the World Cup since 1994 in the United States, when Brazil beat Italy on penalty kicks. So I guess it doesn't happen as often, maybe as we think. But yeah, any takeaways from Argentina? Messi got his first World Cup. France failed to repeat as world champions.
I think as a whole, I think Messi winning kind of caps his entire career, where that may have been the thing that was missing for him, and making a challenge for the greatest, or at least amongst the greatest players of all time.
Yeah,
Now no one can say that he doesn't have one, so that's an argument that can't be made against him anymore. So I think that's probably maybe the most important thing. I am not a fan of, well, let's see, maybe I would say one of my favorite Onion articles was after France won. Oh, it must have been was that 2006?
France won in '98,
90, maybe it was
and
90. Was it 90?
then in 2000, and then in 18. So they've won twice. They
Okay.
lost. They lost to Italy in the 2006 final. That was the famous Zidane headbutt.
Maybe that was it. Maybe it was an article that was in the lead up to the World Cup final, where the headline that they had was any sport that France can be the best in the world is by definition not a sport. So I was glad to see France not repeat, so that we can claim soccer as a sport again, at least for until France tries to win again.
Well, France, I think, had a really good team. Mbappe is probably the best player in the world
Yeah.
right now. It probably would have really. He only scored 3 goals in that game. He has 2 penalty kicks, but still,
Yeah.
that would have maybe solidified him as perhaps having a claim as the maybe one of the greatest players of all time if his team if France wins 2 World Cups in a row. Although I don't think on the professional level Mbappe has had quite the success as Messi. When Messi played for Barcelona and they always won the Champions League and stuff like that. I don't think Mbappe. He plays for. I guess he plays in the same team now as Messi, and they both play for Paris Saint-Germain. PSG has not quite had the success internationally lately that some of those other teams have, but maybe that'll change. So yeah, it was an interesting World Cup. Unfortunately, it was held in Qatar for a number of reasons. And I think it probably cast Qatar at a more favorable light because of the competitiveness of the games and things like that than it had any right to than Qatar has any right to be. But that's just how it is. It was corrupt FIFA puts it there, and we wait 4 more years for the United States, Mexico, and Canada to host. Although there is another World Cup coming up in several months this summer. That's the Women's World Cup. Do you know where the Women's World Cup in 2023 is going to be held?
I don't.
It's not going to be good for TV if you want to watch it here. It's held in Australia, New Zealand.
Oh, cool.
So
that'll make a lot of very late games.
We're very early, or games yesterday that should be tomorrow. I have no idea how the time works.
Right. Because they're like what, about 18 hours ahead of us, I guess, right, time wise.
Let me see, Sydney. So it is right now. It is 3:02. It's 11:02 right now. I'm in the Eastern Time Zone. You're 10:02 in Kansas City. It is 3:02 p.m. Wednesday.
Right.
In Sydney. So that is 16 hours.
16 hours later. Okay, yeah. Because I watched some Australian rules football like just before the pandemic, and then during the pandemic they had it on a lot in the US because there weren't any sporting events here, but they were still playing there. And the afternoon games were that's about right. Yeah, it'd be an afternoon or an evening game would be 10 p.m. or midnight, I think was the next start time, I think. So it'd be like a mid early evening game, I guess, at like 5 p.m. there and midnight here, something like that.
Yeah,
so 1 a.m. start time. Yeah, something like that.
16 hours. That's a tough one. It's going to be weird for Europe too.
Yeah.
So the games will have to be like at 7 a.m. or something. I don't know, but
it's like that for watching the Australian Open in tennis, and
yeah, that's true.
And we still do it though, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Or they'll tape delay everything for primetime games, or
yeah, I don't know what they'll do. But it seems like they don't do that as much anymore. Yeah, and like soccer games aren't as packaged like the Olympics are. Even the
they have like primetime schedules
that packaged in that way. They'll just play live. Yeah, I guess the USA probably has a much better shot at winning that World Cup than they do the Men's World Cup. But so yeah, we'll wait a few more months for that. You want to head to?
But that also means that some people, especially on the sports media, don't have to pretend to care about soccer for the next like 8 months or so, right? Is that sound?
Yeah. Well, we'll have like the Champions League and things like that coming up as time goes on, and the battle of the Premier League and things like that. But no international soccer or soccer where Americans are really involved at a high level. I guess there are occasional American players in some of these good teams now, but it's not like it's not like the MLS teams are gonna win these global competitions. But speaking, so we'll end our soccer discussion and move on to week 16 of the NFL. And week 16, what is your first bet for week 16? What's Dr. Scaff's number one pick?
Well, this is a weird week too, where the typical Sunday games are all being held on Saturday.
Saturday, yeah, because Christmas is on Sunday, I guess, and they think,
Mm.
well, they have 3 games on Sunday and 1 game on Monday, and all the rest of the games are going to be on Saturday, which is
And no buys anymore, right? These are
no more
all
buys.
teams are playing this
Mhm.
week. Yeah. So my first pick up, I'm actually going to the Thursday game. One of the rare times that we've picked in the Thursday games. I guess we've done it a couple times, but not
No,
super often.
December 22nd,
Yeah. That
Christmas
is
Eve, Eve, Eve,
what?
Christmas Eve, Eve,
Yes, exactly.
Eve.
Which in the Scaff household is also known as my brother's birthday. So it'll
The
be
22nd.
yeah,
I was thinking he was the 26th.
22nd.
Okay,
Yeah. So yeah, so
you would know better than I would. That's for
happy
sure.
birthday to Steven, and I'm sure he'll be rooting for my pick to probably fail. It's gonna go on a limb here. But I'm taking Jacksonville and New York are have an even line. So really, this is just a pick the winner type game. I think Jacksonville has their gonna be trying to keep their playoff chances alive. Jets are on their way down. I think Mike White I think is still out. Trevor Lawrence coming off a pretty good win.
Yeah,
I think the Jags will take this one on the road, and yeah. So I've got Jacksonville on an even spread in the first game.
if I had to pick that game, I'd pick that too. This is the second week in a row where New York Jets have been at home and haven't had a pick 'em game. The Lions won last week. I think the Jaguars are on a kind of similar upward trajectory that the Lions have been on. So I think that's a solid pick, and especially with Zach Wilson as quarterback. I think the Jets' offensive upside is pretty limited. So yeah, I think and Trevor Lawrence has been playing really well. So I think I would lean towards Jacksonville, even if it might be cold. I would lean towards Jacksonville in that game, but you never know. That's why they play, I suppose, and why they try to entice you with those good-looking bets. There were a lot of bets that I thought looked kind of good, but I have been second guessing myself a lot. But my first bet, since an extremely low total last week, I decided to go with the over. There's even a lower total this week. The Saints at the Browns on Saturday. The Saints Browns over under line is 32, and neither the Saints nor the Browns have prolific offenses right now. But and the weather might be bad, but I still think that it will go over. They really want you to take that. I think they're looking for. Everybody's taking the under. It seems like, so they're probably looking for people to take the over, break even. And I think all it has to be is 20-13, or 19-14. It'll be over. So I think we can get three. I
Or
think we can get
33-0. That works too.
Yeah, 33-0. The worst outcome I could see would be a 21-10 game.
Right.
I could see that. That could be a likely score outcome. But 20, yeah, I think as long as 32 is absurdly low, and I know games can be low. There have been lots of the under has been the bet of the year so far in the NFL this season. But I think the sports books have figured that out. So I think they're artificially putting things a little bit lower than they normally might. So I'm going to do Cleveland, New Orleans over 32. Even that, and this also doesn't mean I will be betting on Deshaun Watson winning a game. Just that there will be enough points scored by his team or against his team this season. So
Yeah, they have a good running game too, and they have a dynamic quarterback, whether or not you like him or not. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But they do have those things, and it seems like that should be enough to get some points. But they have not been scoring the first couple of games that Deshaun Watson's been under center. I will say that this most recent game, Cleveland Baltimore over under was 39, and combined they made it to 16. Mike, does that worry you?
A bit, but I'm counting a little bit on my one of my enemies, Taysom Hill, to pull through for New Orleans. Do you realize that Taysom Hill this year has a 147.3 quarterback rating? He has thrown for two interceptions, two touchdowns, no interceptions, 11 of 17 for 216 yards so far. So if they give it to Hill a little bit more, maybe we'll have a better shot at going over 32, which is just stepping step over a slightly a small step in one small step for man, one giant for a man, one giant leap for mankind. I think this is neither is a giant leap. This is a small step for mankind, as well as for an individual person. So I'm confident they can do that.
Man, I don't know if I'd ever expected this to have Mike rooting for Taysom Hill. I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah, Taysom Hill and Deshaun Watson to work together to get some points scored.
You don't care if anybody wins. Maybe you hope they both lose, but it doesn't matter as long as they score more than 32 points combined. Right?
Yeah, a 17-17 tie, I think, would be funny.
It's fine. That's fine. That works.
Yeah. I actually kind of want New Orleans to win just to continue to screw up the NFC South playoff race.
Yeah.
And maybe there could be a four-way tie at 7 and 10 for the NFC South playoffs.
You're playing the agent of chaos role.
Yes.
You just want it to be a mess.
And I think if all four teams were 7 and 10, I think there would be some sort of push by the NFL to say that a division winner has to win at least 8 games to get a playoff. Qualify for the playoffs. I think it should be a minimum qualification standard.
500 record or winning record.
I'd say not even a winning record. So if you're 8-9, I'd say just win 8 games out of 17.
So if you are a true agent of chaos, then hoping for like a tie or this big pileup, what if the scenario comes out where the game ends in a 16-16 tie and therefore a push in your bet? How annoyed will you be when that happens?
I'd be annoyed, but I wouldn't be as annoyed if it were a 15-15 tie. A push right now would, because you have a push so far on your record, so I need to stay ahead of you as well. So I wouldn't be the most. I would be irked, but
nonplussed even.
Yeah, maybe even vexed. but not bewildered. Not bewildered. To bring that back from a few weeks ago.
But it wasn't vexed though. It was
bewildered. They were bewildered.
It wasn't bewildered either. It was something else.
Flummoxed.
Flummoxed. That's it.
That's what it was. Flummoxed. I wouldn't be flummoxed.
I think we decided the bewildered would have been more.
I guess I would have been
most appropriate. Yes,
I would have been flummoxed if I were Bill Belichick by the decision of his players on the final play of the Raiders game and Patriots game.
Unless that's what he's been teaching them to do, and then
I would have been flummoxed.
They pulled it off exactly as they planned it.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. How about your second bet?
So my second pick, I'm sticking with a theme that I had last week too, with Cincinnati maybe trying to make a push for the 1 seed even. And they've got a game this week where they're favored by 3.5 points at New England. I expect Cincy to not leave much doubt in trying to make this push. I think they will easily cover that 3.5 point spread. So Cincy -3.5.
Yeah, I could see that too. I think New England somehow being at 7-7 is kind of a miracle, given their offensive weaknesses, especially. So I don't think they can. I think if you play against Cincinnati, you have to keep up with and score with them, and I don't see that. At least not. I still I maybe I'm maybe not in the majority here, but I still think Bailey Zappi is a better quarterback than Mac Jones, and maybe it was just because I saw Mac Jones get planted, face planted by Chandler Jones when he intercepted that lateral and tried to get tackled. It looked a little bit. It looked even worse than the Russell Wilson tackle on Willie Gay last a couple weeks ago. Then
Right.
Jones and Chandler Jones. So yeah, I would. I think that's the side I would be on. So, but you know, that doesn't mean a guaranteed win. That's for sure. Speaking of not a guaranteed win, my second pick is the Chiefs. I'm going back to the Chiefs minus 9.5 at home against the Seahawks. The last time I bet the Chiefs minus 9.5 at home, that was a few weeks ago. That was against the Jaguars, and they won by 10. So they covered that week. I think the Jaguars were a better team, even though they had a worse record than the Seahawks. And I think that the Chiefs had a lot of close games lately. I think they're going to want to try to win one comfortably. The cold weather, I think, will actually help them do that more easily. They tend to play pretty well in the cold. And I see a more comfortable victory here as the Chiefs try to win out to win the 1 seeds. So I see the Chiefs minus 9.5.
And I think they finally get to play up a little bit. The last couple weeks have been against kind of what are looked at being a weaker opponents, and the Chiefs do seem to play to the level of their opponent. So maybe they get to play a little better this time.
Yeah, I think maybe you could say though that the Seahawks are 500, they're battling for a playoff spot. They're really going to be up for this game because they desperately need this game to make the playoffs. Really, I think they are on the outside looking in right now. They have no chance at the division. They really need to.
Yeah, they seem to be fading at least a bit as the season's worn on.
Yeah, right now the Seahawks have according to 538, have a 30% chance of making the playoffs. They're behind the Lions right now.
Wow.
And behind the Commanders, of course. And so, yeah, this is a must-win game for them. But and then they play home against the Jets and home against the Rams. So they probably, I would say, need to win out to make it, or at least win 2 out of the 3. But this game's not good. Yeah, it's the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs will be up for it, and so yeah, I think they'll win by double digits. How about
It's always good to try to go into the playoff scenario having hopefully winning in dominant fashion against teams that are potentially contenders, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And the Chiefs, according to 538, disregarding the other results, if they win out, they have a 66% chance of winning the first round by winning out. So they really need to do that.
Yeah.
One loss will.
Well, they need Cincinnati to beat Buffalo. Then, right?
Yeah, they need Cincinnati to beat Buffalo. If they lose one of these, if they lose against Seattle, they only have a 12% chance of getting the first round bye.
The route becomes much more difficult.
Yeah, any loss basically bumps them down to a 12% chance from a 66% chance. So, who's your third pick?
So my third pick, I'm doing something a little atypical for myself anyway. But there is an NFC defensive struggle likely coming up here between I think two of the top 3 defenses in the NFC, Washington at San Francisco. The over-under line is a little higher than I would have guessed, 39.5. And I think I'm going to take the under in this one. I think the defenses will be on display, and I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle. I think I like to continue to bet on Purdy and San Francisco, but I'm not sure that they will cover the 7-point spread that it is. So I think they'll win, but I think I feel more confident in the under on that game anyway.
Okay. I could see that. Even if you think the 49ers are going to win big, a 27-10 win would be comfortably, not comfortably, but under.
You get a little nervous there anyway.
Yeah. 24-10, something like that.
Yeah.
If they play as well as they like, I don't think Washington's offense is that great, and
But
San
their
Francisco's,
defense has been very strong though in the last, especially recently.
yeah, and
They've only
San
given up
Francisco's,
more than 20 points a couple times in the last like 6 weeks or 7 weeks. And it's like I think over the times they've given up more than 20, it's only been like by one more point. I think 21, I think is the high they've given up recently. So
so if they hold, I think San Francisco 21 or fewer, I think that you have a good shot for sure of winning the under. But even if they go over, I don't see the Washington scoring more than 2 touchdowns really. So it'll
what do
be,
you think so?
yeah. So that's So my last bet is also an NFC matchup between two playoff hopefuls, and that is the Giants at the Vikings, and that is the Vikings are favored by 3.5 at home against the Giants. It is, the Vikings have not been very impressive in most of their victories. They've won a lot of very close games. They've lost a lot of blowouts to good teams, but here they're at home. It's a Saturday game, 1:00 p.m., sandwiched amongst a lot of other 1:00 games. So I think we won't get the frightened primetime Kirk Cousins effect. We will have instead the solid matinee Kirk Cousins, and Cousins this year has been really good, and he's been playing very well as of late. He was in his last 4 games, he's thrown 10 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. He's thrown for over 400 yards in 2 consecutive games now, and so I can see the Vikings scoring enough points to stay ahead of the Giants. I think Giants have a good defense, but I don't think their offense is really good enough to take advantage of Minnesota's weaknesses on defense either. So I think New York is coming off a big victory against their division rival. This game, I think, whether the Giants win or lose, they're still probably going to make the playoffs no matter what, since they won that last game. I think that, and so I think Minnesota is still looking for maybe confirmation that they are a good team, and looking for a little bit of respect from the rest of the NFL. So I think beating a playoff caliber team at home will help. And so it's a 3.5-point spread. I'd rather have it be a 3 or a 2.5-point spread, obviously, but I still think Minnesota will be able to score enough. So I'm talking myself into the Vikings here at home. Last time I think I picked the Vikings at home against a potential playoff team was it the Dallas game where they got blown out.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I can't remember. I don't remember if I predicted them to beat the Jets at home. I think I did that as well. I predicted the Vikings to cover against the New York Jets at home as well, and they did that. So I think maybe they'll do it against the Giants too. So
yeah, you had week 11. Yeah, you had them against Dallas. Let's see if I can quickly find something else. You had an under with them against the Lions way back that you got apparently.
I think I had week 13 Minnesota against the Jets. They won by 5.
These are in random order, Mike. This is not my head. Here's week 13. No Minnesota, week 13.
Oh, I didn't
Oh,
have
we
it.
had week 12,
Week 12.
-3 against the Jets, and you got it.
Yes, so similar. Okay, week 12.
There you go.
Yeah, so Jets, New York teams at home, uh, in a less than 4 point spread. I'm 100% so far on the year, so I'm looking to continue that.
Does it worry you that they're only +2 point differential on the season? You're asking them to double their entire season's point differential in a single game. Is that worrisome or
It
no?
is worrisome, but the Giants, fortunately, are even worse in point differential than the Vikings. The Giants' point differential so far on the season, I believe, is -25.
25.
So even though they have a winning record, they have a -25 point. So perhaps they're even more fraudulent than the Vikings. So
The Lions are +5 at 7-7. Well, the Vikings are 11-3 and +2.
yes.
Crazy.
The only team that's really playing to its exact level that it should be, according to the plus minus differential, is the Seattle Seahawks. They are 7-7 with a 0
Even. Yeah.
differential.
The Raiders are +1 at 6-8.
Yeah.
The Dolphins are +1 at 8-6.
Yeah. I think, yeah.
It is kind of funny to be like this deep into the season and be, like basically neutral. Usually you go, one way or the other, right?
Mhm.
But it seems funny, yeah, because like you may have gone, all over the place, point scoring, but then you're, flat.
Yeah.
Like where have you actually gone all season if you haven't gone anywhere, right?
Yeah. It seems like the Chiefs have been playing lots and lots of close games, but there's still a plus 92 point differential over 14 games. So yeah.
That's similar to where the Bengals are.
The Bengals are plus 81, so the Chiefs are above.
Percentage wise, that'd be like extremely close to what the Bengals are
Mhm.
for expected wins based on that.
Mhm. The Eagles, Cowboys, and Bills are the only teams above 100. No, and the 49ers are also
Yeah.
100. Even though the Chiefs beat the 49ers by 23 points on the road, the point differential is still pretty good. So I feel like the
Look
Chiefs
at the
losses,
NFC South for point differential though. That's where it's
yeah,
amusing.
yeah, the NFC South everybody's low. And the Chiefs' losses, I think, have become from a combined 10 points. So even if they're 14-0, um, they would, if they won each of those games by 1 point, they would only be 100 plus 105. That would be lower than any of the other teams. So they
Yeah.
played a lot of close games.
Yeah, they do play a very close game.
They try to keep it close, even when I think when they win, they intentionally deflate their score because of Andy Reid's gentlemanly behavior.
That's what we're gonna have to see if you take a Chiefs approach and try to, now that you've taken a lead in our betting competition, will you, relax a bit and try to like coast to a gentlemanly
Yeah,
one correct bet victory now that you have that one lead? Is that what's gonna happen now? You're gonna like let me back into this here in the
I'm just
last
going to try to run out the clock and
yeah.
go for you. Not try to go 3-0 every week, but only try to go 2-1 every week.
Right. You're gonna aim for 2-1 because that's like. I think that's the highest I've ever gotten is 2-1. But
Yeah,
because I don't think I've gotten 3 correct in a week.
yeah. So I just need to yeah.
Some team has always cheated me out of that last win.
But we'll see if that happens again this next week. Should we wrap it up?
Sure.
Uh, so good luck to everybody in week 16. We wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Winter holiday, whatever you might be celebrating. And we'll be back with another exciting Morning Track Power Hour next week, getting ready for real crunch time in the NFL season. But until then, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Morning Track Power Hour. Please like and subscribe to our podcast delivery vehicles, whether audio or video on YouTube. And until next week, do we have anything to add between my sign off and this?
I don't think so.
Maybe we'll cut this part out. So until next week, I bid you good day.